"I know how to save your daughter," whispered the ragged black boy, clinging to the sleeve of the billionaire's expensive jacket. Michael Blackwood, owner of the tech empire Black Innovation, turned sharply, meeting the gaze of a skinny teenager in a tattered Chicago Bulls sweatshirt. "Who sent you?" he muttered through his teeth, grabbing the boy by the shoulder with such force that he winced. "Nobody, sir. I just know that your daughter Olivia is dying because of the drug that was supposed to cure her. The same one that your pharmaceutical company makes." Michael turned pale. Only doctors and immediate family knew about his daughter's diagnosis. How could this street urchin— "We don't have much time," the boy continued, not looking away. "In 48 hours, the damage will be irreversible. I've seen it before, with other children. They hide everything. The most interesting part is coming. Stay with us to find out how it all ends. In the meantime, like and subscribe to the channel so you don't lose it." The last rays of the setting sun were filtering through the glass doors of Chicago's elite Mercy Memorial Hospital, painting the white walls blood red. Michael Blackwood sat with his head in his hands in the empty hallway of the intensive care unit. His expensive jacket was rumpled, his tie was loosened, and his once piercing blue eyes were filled with absolute despair. 52 hours. That's how long it had been since his only daughter, 13-year-old Olivia, had collapsed during a school trip to the Natural History Museum. 52 hours of nightmare, with the country's top doctors throwing up their hands in helpless dismay, putting forward increasingly dark hypotheses. "Mr. Blackwood?" Dr. Harrison, the head of pediatrics, broke Michael out of his stupor. "The latest test results are in. We'd like to discuss— Have you found the reason?" Michael jumped up, grasping at the slightest glimmer of hope. Dr. Harrison, a man of impeccable reputation and 2 Nobel Prize nominations, adjusted his glasses uncertainly. "I'm afraid not. The symptoms are extremely unusual. Intermittent fever, a mysterious rash that comes and goes for no apparent reason, abnormal blood counts. We think it may be a rare autoimmune disease." Michael felt his heart tighten. Another theory, another dead end. "What do you suggest?" "We want to start aggressive immunosuppressive therapy. That's our best option at this point." Michael nodded, feeling completely helpless. Dr. Harrison shook his hand briefly and headed toward the staff room, where a group of consultants were waiting. It was at that moment that Michael felt a light tap on his elbow. He turned to see a skinny black boy, about 14 years old, wearing a worn Chicago Bulls sweatshirt and old jeans. His big brown eyes were intense. "Are you the father of the girl from room 317? The boy asked in a quiet but confident voice. Michael tensed. He was well known in business circles. But how did this child know where his daughter was? "Who are you? How did you get here?" The boy looked around, as if checking if anyone was listening, and said, "I know how to save your daughter." Michael stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or call security. A look of irritation crossed his face. "Listen, kid, I don't know who sent you, but this isn't funny. My daughter is seriously ill, and I don't— She started taking neurobalance about 6 weeks ago, right?" The boy interrupted. "For anxiety and panic attacks. It's a new drug, and now she has intermittent fever, a strange rash that comes and goes as if on schedule, and joint pain that the doctors can't explain." Michael froze. This information was not publicly available. Olivia's anxiety disorder diagnosis was a family secret, known only to him, his ex-wife, and the doctors who treated her. "Who the heck are you?" Michael hissed, grabbing the boy's shoulder with such force that he winced. "How did you know about neurobalance?" "My name is Tyler. Tyler Jackson." The boy didn't look away despite the pain. "I help out here, unofficially. Sometimes I clean, sometimes I deliver mail. Miss Pearson, the former head nurse, took me under her wing until—" He paused as he heard footsteps approaching. Dr. Harrison appeared from around the corner, holding a clipboard. "Mr. Blackwood, here are the consent forms for—" He stopped on noticing Tyler. "What are you doing here, young man? This department is restricted." Tyler instantly looked guilty, hanging his head. "Sorry, Dr. Harrison. I was just asking Mr. Blackwood if he needed anything." The doctor looked at the boy with distrust. "You must not disturb our patients or their families. Go and mind your own business." Tyler nodded, but before leaving, he quickly whispered to Michael, "I'll be waiting at the service entrance in an hour, if you want to know the truth about what's happening to your daughter." Michael watched the boy leave, feeling a strange mixture of suspicion and hope. In front of him were consent forms for an aggressive therapy that could help his daughter. or hurt her further. Dr. Harrison was saying something about risks and potential side effects, but the words reached Michael as if he were speaking through water. "I need time to think, doctor," he finally said. "Give me an hour." "Of course, Mr. Blackwood, but I must emphasize that time is of the essence." Michael nodded and headed toward his daughter's room. Olivia lay hooked up to numerous machines. Her usually rosy cheeks were pale, and the thick chestnut hair she'd inherited from her mother lay lifelessly across the pillow. The IV line ticked away, filling the room with a quiet, hypnotic rhythm. Michael sat down next to the bed, taking his daughter's cold hand in his own. "Hey, honey," he whispered, though he knew Olivia was sedated and couldn't hear him. "Daddy will find a way to help you, I promise." His thoughts were racing. On one hand, an offer of immunosuppressive therapy from one of the country's top pediatricians. On the other, a strange boy with information he had no way of knowing, unless he'd actually seen something like this before. The clock showed that 40 minutes had passed. Michael kissed his daughter on the forehead and left the room. Instead of returning to Dr. Harrison, he walked to the elevators and went down to the first floor. Finding the service entrance was difficult, but he eventually found an inconspicuous door in the far hallway. Tyler was waiting for him, leaning against the wall. When he saw Michael, he straightened up and looked around. "You came," he said with a slight surprise in his voice. "You have 5 minutes to explain how you know about my daughter and what you know," Michael said coldly. Tyler took a deep breath. "Not here, it's not safe. Can we walk? It's just a block, to the cafe on the corner." Michael hesitated. Every minute away from Olivia felt like a betrayal, but something in the boy's eyes, sincerity tinged with desperation, made him nod. 1 block in 5 minutes. "Got it? Got it." Tyler walked out the service door, and Michael followed him. Evening Chicago greeted them with a cold wind and drizzle. Michael shivered, wishing he had brought a raincoat. Tyler seemed oblivious to the weather, striding confidently along the wet sidewalk. "6 months ago, I started noticing strange things," he said without turning around. Children were coming into the hospital with similar symptoms. Unexplained fevers, strange rashes, joint pain. Doctors made different diagnoses, from rare infections to autoimmune diseases. But nothing helped. Some didn't survive. Michael felt a chill run down his spine, and not just from the rain. Ms. Pearson, the head nurse of pediatrics, also noticed a pattern. She collected information, compared cases, and discovered that all these children were taking Neurobalance, a new anti-anxiety drug for children and adolescents. Neurobalance? Michael frowned. "But it's a safe drug. It's been through all the clinical trials, FDA approved." "That's what everyone thought." Tyler stopped outside a small cafe and looked Michael straight in the eye. "Until Ms. Pearson discovered that Neurobalance caused a severe autoimmune reaction in a certain percentage of children with a specific genetic profile. The manufacturer knew about it, but hid the data from the FDA. Michael felt the ground slipping from under his feet. Neurobalance was produced by MedTech Pharma, a subsidiary of his corporation acquired just a year ago. "That's a serious accusation," he said, trying to keep his cool. "Where's the evidence?" Ms. Pearson had proof. She wrote up a detailed report, collected case histories, found patterns. When she presented it to the hospital management, she was fired within a week. "Staff reduction," Tyler chuckled bitterly. 26 years of excellent service, and suddenly her position was redundant. Michael was silent, digesting the information. What the boy was saying sounded wild, but it explained Olivia's mysterious condition better than the doctor's vague theories. "If what you say is true, why didn't Ms. Pearson go to the FDA, to the prosecutor's office, to the press, for example?" "She tried, but who's going to listen to a fired nurse speaking out against a pharmaceutical giant? MedTech Pharma has an army of lawyers and connections to regulators. She'd be charged with libel faster than she could speak." Michael sighed. He knew it was true. He hired these lawyers himself. "So what now? How does this information help my daughter?" "Miss Pearson knows how to treat this condition. She has seen effective protocols. But first you need to stop taking Neurobalance, immediately. And under no circumstances give immunosuppressants. They will only make the situation worse." Michael's head snapped up. "Dr. Harrison just suggested aggressive immunosuppressive therapy." Tyler turned pale. "Then we must hurry. Can you take me to Miss Pearson? She lives on the south side, about 20 minutes from here." "South side?" Now? Michael glanced at his watch. It was almost 10 o'clock. If you want to save your daughter, yes, now. Tyler's voice held a steeliness that was hard to expect from a teenager. Michael hesitated for only a second. My car is in the hospital parking lot. Let's go. They walked quickly back to the clinic. Michael took out his phone. I need to call the doctor and stop the immunosuppressive therapy. Don't tell him the reason, Tyler quickly warned. Just say you want some additional consultation before making such a big decision. Michael nodded and dialed the number. The short conversation with Dr. Harrison was tense, but Michael insisted. I understand the risks of delay, doctor, but this decision is too important. I want a second opinion. After finishing the conversation, he led Tyler to his black Mercedes. Sitting behind the wheel, Michael turned to the boy. Give me the address. Tyler dictated an address in one of Chicago's roughest neighborhoods. Michael entered it into the GPS and pulled out of the parking lot. How long have you known Miss Pearson? He asked, breaking the awkward silence. 3 years, Tyler said, looking out the window at the city lights passing by. My mom, she had problems. Drugs, alcohol. I'd often end up in the hospital waiting in the hallways for her, sometimes for days. Miss Pearson noticed me, started feeding me. Then she let me help with little errands. She's the only one who saw me as a person, not a problem. His voice cracked on the last words, and Michael felt a pang of guilt. How many kids like Tyler had he simply overlooked in his privileged life? And your mother? She died 2 years ago. Overdose, Tyler said evenly. But Michael saw his fingers curl into fists. I live with my grandma. She tries, but it's hard for her. So I work where I can. At the hospital, at the grocery store on the corner. Sometimes I deliver newspapers. Michael didn't know what to say. The gap between their worlds seemed unbridgeable. While this boy was struggling to survive, his own daughter had a personal tennis coach and tutors in 3 languages. The GPS announced their arrival. They stopped at a rundown apartment building with peeling paint and bars on the first-floor windows. Michael couldn't help but check to see if the car doors were locked. It's safe here, Tyler noted, a hint of irony in his voice. At least at this time of day, the gangs usually hang out further down the street. Michael wasn't particularly comforted, but he got out of the car, setting off the alarm. Tyler led him to the entrance, where he punched in a code on the battered panel. The door slid open with a long creak. They walked up the stairs to the 3rd floor. The hallway smelled of fried onions and dampness. Tyler stopped at door number 312 and knocked in a special way. 3 short, 2 long knocks. A cautious voice was heard through the door. Who's there? It's me, Miss Pearson. Tyler, I brought someone who needs your help. There was a pause, then the sound of locks being unlocked. 1, 2, 3. The door opened a crack the width of the chain, and an elderly African-American woman with piercing eyes and gray hair, pulled back into a tight bun, peered out. Tyler, what's going on? Who's that with you? Miss Pearson, this is Mr. Blackwood. His daughter is at Mercy Memorial. She's reacting to neurobalance, I'm sure. Same as the children you spoke of. The woman's eyes widened in surprise and wariness. Blackwood? Michael Blackwood from Black Innovation? Michael nodded, feeling uncomfortable under her gaze. Yes, it's me. And if what Tyler says is true, my daughter needs your help. Miss Pearson hesitated, studying his face. Finally, she unhooked the chain and opened the door. Come in, quickly. The apartment was small, but incredibly clean and tidy. Framed photographs and diplomas adorned the walls. Medical journals and a stack of papers lay on the coffee table. Sit down, Miss Pearson said, gesturing toward a shabby but clean sofa. Tyler, tell me exactly what you know about the girl's condition. Tyler recounted Olivia's symptoms while Miss Pearson listened attentively, nodding occasionally. Michael was struck by the accuracy of his observations. And Dr. Harrison suggested immunosuppressive therapy. Tyler finished. Miss Pearson shook her head. That would be a disaster. Immunosuppressants would only worsen the autoimmune reaction caused by neurobalance. It would be like putting out a fire with gasoline. She turned to Michael. Mr. Blackwood, I understand that this is a shock to you. You probably didn't even know that your company produces neurobalance. I knew, Michael said quietly. MedTech Pharma is a subsidiary of Black Innovation. We acquired it a year ago as part of our business diversification. But I didn't go into the details of the drugs. It's not my area of expertise. Miss Pearson nodded as if she had expected this answer. I understand. Most managers delegate such issues. The problem is that the management of MedTech Pharma deliberately concealed information about the serious side effects of neurobalance in a certain group of patients. She stood up and walked over to the bookshelf, from where she took out a thick folder. Here's all my research. 63 cases of severe autoimmune reactions after taking neurobalance, documented at Mercy Memorial alone in the last 6 months. 17 deaths. Michael felt like he'd been punched in the gut. 17 kids. And no one raised the alarm? The cases were disparate. Different diagnoses, different departments. I only noticed a pattern because I worked in all the pediatric departments. When I presented the evidence to Dr. Harrison, he said my findings were speculative and unprofessional. When I went up to the chief medical officer, Dr. Foster, I was fired within a week. She handed Michael a folder. He opened it and saw dozens of pages of charts, tables, and clinical notes, all written in Ms. Pearson's neat handwriting. But why? Why did they hide it? Money, Mr. Blackwood. It's always about money. Neurobalance is a billion-dollar blockbuster. Admitting it could be fatal to a certain group of patients would mean recalling the drug, paying compensation, losing market confidence. It's much cheaper to write off these cases as rare diseases and natural causes. Michael felt a wave of anger rising inside him. At the company, at himself, at the system that had allowed this to happen. What can we do for my daughter? Miss Pearson sat down again, her hands folded in her lap. The first and most important thing is to stop taking neurobalance immediately. Then you need to start a specific treatment protocol that I developed while studying these cases. It is a combination of certain antioxidants, plasmapheresis, and targeted immunotherapy. I have seen it work in 4 patients that I was able to help informally through connections at the hospital. Can you write this protocol? I will find doctors who will implement it. I have. Ms. Pearson pulled out several pages of medical terminology from a folder. But I must warn you, Dr. Harrison will never approve of this. He is too deeply involved. MedTech Pharma has a special fund for research grants to loyal doctors. Michael felt his world crumble. Cold anger gave way to determination. I need to pick up my daughter from Mercy Memorial. Right now. It's risky in her condition, Miss Pearson warned, but leaving her there is perhaps even riskier. I know a clinic that might help, Tyler chimed in. St. Luke's Community Health Center in Bronzeville. Dr. Washington is the chief medical officer there. He's independent, doesn't take grants from drug companies. And he listened to Ms. Pearson, even after she was fired. Miss Pearson nodded. Dr. Washington is a good man and an excellent doctor. If anyone can help your daughter, it's him. Michael stood up, determination giving him strength. Then let's go there. Right now. Miss Pearson, I would be very grateful if you would come with us. The older woman thought for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Give me 5 minutes to collect the necessary documents and medications. While Ms. Pearson prepared, Michael made several calls. The first was to his attorney, Jonathan Price, with instructions to immediately begin an investigation into MedTech Pharma's practices and prepare paperwork to transfer Olivia to another clinic. The second was to his ex-wife, Caroline, who had been living in New York since their divorce 3 years earlier. The conversation was difficult. Caroline was shocked by the news and promised to take the first flight to Chicago. Michael looked around Ms. Pearson's apartment, noticing details he hadn't noticed in his haste. Photos of her in scrubs with her colleagues, diplomas and certificates, awards for outstanding service to healthcare. This woman had dedicated her life to saving others, and society had thrown her out when she tried to do what was right. Tyler sat quietly, watching Michael with his piercing eyes. You didn't know, did you? He finally asked. About what your company does? Michael shook his head. No, but that's no excuse. I should have known. I should have checked, not just looked at the profit figures. Miss Pearson returned with a small bag and a folder of documents. I am ready, but I must warn you, Mr. Blackwood, what we are about to do will not please many influential people. They will resist in every way. I don't care, Michael replied firmly. This is my daughter's life at stake, and judging by your research, the lives of many other children. I will use all my resources to fix this. They left the apartment and walked down to Michael's car. The south side at night seemed ominous, but Michael wasn't thinking about danger right now. His thoughts were completely focused on saving Olivia. In the car, Michael dialed Dr. Harrison's number. Doctor, this is Michael Blackwood. I have decided to get a second opinion on my daughter's case. Under the Patient Access to Medical Records Act, I am requesting a complete copy of her medical records, and as her legal guardian, I have the right to consult with other specialists. The pause at the other end was telling. Mr. Blackwood, I strongly advise against moving your daughter in her condition. It could seriously worsen her situation. If you would like a second opinion, I can arrange consultations with leading specialists right here at our clinic. I appreciate your concern, doctor, but the decision has been made. I will be at the hospital in 20 minutes. Please prepare Olivia for transport. Mr. Blackwood, I must insist. Michael hung up and stepped on the gas. Time was against them. Returning to Mercy Memorial, Michael encountered the resistance he had expected. Dr. Harrison, accompanied by the hospital's chief of staff, Dr. Foster, and 2 nurses, were waiting for him at the entrance to the pediatric ward. Mr. Blackwood, began Dr. Foster, a tall man with graying temples and a cold gaze. I understand your concern, but I must warn you that moving your daughter in her condition is extremely risky and may qualify as endangering her life. I wonder, Dr. Foster, Michael replied, feeling anger rising in him. Were you as concerned about the lives of the 17 children who died from an autoimmune reaction to neurobalance when you fired Ms. Pearson for trying to bring that to light? Dr. Foster turned pale, and Dr. Harrison took a step back as if he had heard something indecent. I don't know who gave you this misinformation, Mr. Blackwood, but I have all the evidence, Michael interrupted, and my lawyer is on his way with Olivia's transfer paperwork and possibly the FDA, who would be very interested in talking to both of you. He took a step forward, forcing the doctors to retreat. And now I'm going to my daughter, and no one dares to stop me. Michael walked past the stunned doctors to Olivia's room. As he entered, he saw a nurse adjusting an IV. What are you doing? He asked sharply. A routine solution change, Mr. Blackwood, she replied, clearly nervous under his gaze. Show me exactly what you're entering. The nurse hesitated, but under his insistent gaze, she showed him the label on the bag of solution. Michael was not a doctor, but even he could see that this was not ordinary saline. Is this part of the immunosuppressive therapy? He asked, his blood running cold. I was told to start the prep course, the nurse looked confused. Dr. Harrison, stop it immediately. Michael walked over to the IV and closed the valve. I did not consent to this therapy. In fact, I clearly expressed my desire to postpone it. At that moment, Jonathan Price entered the room, a tall man in an impeccable suit, carrying a leather briefcase in his hand. Michael, I've got all the necessary paperwork, and a private ambulance is already waiting downstairs. Miss Pearson came in next, now dressed in professional attire, wearing a badge on her chest that Michael was sure was no longer valid, but gave her an air of authority. Miss Thompson, she said to the nurse, using her best commanding tone, please prepare the patient for transport. Turn off everything except essential monitoring. The nurse, in her habit of responding to authority, nodded and began to follow instructions before realizing she didn't know the woman. Excuse me, but you? Eleanor Pearson, consulting chief nurse. Any questions will be handled by the legal department. It was a bluff, but it worked long enough for the nurse to begin preparing Olivia for transport. A few minutes later, Dr. Harrison burst into the room, followed by a security guard. What's going on here? Stop this immediately. Mr. Blackwood, you are putting your daughter in grave danger. Jonathan Price calmly took a document out of his briefcase and handed it to the doctor. This is an injunction authorizing the immediate transfer of Miss Olivia Blackwood to St. Luke's Medical Center under the care of Dr. James Washington. Any interference with this transfer will be considered contempt of court. Dr. Harrison looked over the document, his face growing paler. This is unprecedented. I will complain to the medical association. Make any complaints through my lawyer, Michael replied coldly. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to get my daughter into competent hands as soon as possible. By this point, paramedics from a private ambulance had arrived, and after a quick briefing from Ms. Pearson, began moving Olivia onto a gurney. Everything was done with professional efficiency, despite the obvious displeasure of the Mercy Memorial staff. As they walked through the department hall, Michael noticed Tyler standing to the side, watching the proceedings with a tense expression. Their eyes met, and Michael nodded, silently thanking the boy for his help. As they descended into the lobby, they encountered their last obstacle, Dr. Foster, who was standing at the exit where the ambulance was waiting. Mr. Blackwood, he began in a tense voice, I strongly recommend that you reconsider your decision. We can arrange a consultation, bring in the best specialists. All you can do, Dr. Foster, Michael interrupted, is step aside and let us pass. Any further discussions will have to go through my attorney or perhaps before a federal court, when I file a lawsuit against this hospital and MedTech Pharma for concealing the deadly side effects of neurobalance. Dr. Foster looked like he'd been punched. You don't understand what you're getting into, Mr. Blackwood. There are powers. Step aside, doctor, Jonathan Price said firmly, or we'll add obstruction to the list of charges. With obvious reluctance, Dr. Foster stepped back, and the procession moved out to the waiting ambulance. The paramedics carefully loaded Olivia onto the gurney, Miss Pearson sitting next to her, constantly monitoring her condition. I'll follow you, Michael said. Jonathan, I'll take care of everything here and contact the people we talked about. The lawyer nodded. Go be with your daughter. Michael turned to walk to his car and saw Tyler standing at the entrance to the hospital. Tyler, he called, are you coming with us? The boy looked surprised by the invitation, but quickly nodded and ran up to Michael. I know a shortcut to St. Luke's, he said as he got into the Mercedes, if there's any traffic on the main road. Show me. Michael started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, following the flashing lights of the ambulance. Along the way, Tyler kept his eyes on the road, occasionally suggesting turns that actually helped avoid the busiest sections. Michael appreciated his knowledge of the city. It was an experience that no amount of money could buy. Thank you, Michael finally said, breaking the silence. If it weren't for you, I don't even want to think about what might have happened to Olivia. Tyler shrugged awkwardly. I just did what needed to be done. Miss Pearson always says that if you see someone in trouble and you can help, you should help, no matter who that person is. A wise woman, Michael nodded, and you're a good student. They pulled up to St. Luke's Medical Center, a modest building that looked far less imposing than the gleaming glass towers of Mercy Memorial. Once they stepped inside, however, Michael was pleasantly surprised by how clean and organized the facility was. Waiting for them was Dr. Washington, a tall, middle-aged African-American man with intelligent eyes behind round glasses. He personally supervised Olivia's transfer to the intensive care unit, while talking with Miss Pearson about the details of the girl's condition. Mr. Blackwood, he finally turned to Michael once Olivia was hooked up to monitors and settled into her room. I'm sorry we have to meet under these circumstances. Ms. Pearson explained the situation to me, and I agree entirely with her assessment. Your daughter's condition is critical, but not hopeless. Can you help her? Was the only question that worried Michael. I believe so. Ms. Pearson has developed a protocol that has shown promising results in cases like this. It is not FDA approved because this is a new condition, but all components of the treatment are safe and proven. I am prepared to begin immediately with your consent. Do whatever it takes, doctor. Michael felt the tension he'd been holding in for the past few hours begin to ease. I have complete confidence in you and Miss Pearson. Dr. Washington nodded. We'll do our best. For now, I'd recommend you get some rest. We have a family room where you can... I'll stay with my daughter, Michael said firmly. As you wish. The nurses will bring a chair that folds out into a bed. Dr. Washington went out to give orders for the treatment to begin, and Miss Pearson lingered for a moment. Mr. Blackwood, you need to know, what you did today will be seen by many as a declaration of war. MedTech Pharma will not go down without a fight. Their lawyers, their connections with regulators, their influence in the media. They will use it all. I know, Michael replied, and I'm ready. I have resources too, Ms. Pearson, and I'm going to use them all to make this right. Not just for Olivia, but for all the other children they've put in danger. Miss Pearson looked at him carefully, as if assessing his determination. I believe you, and thank you, she turned to Tyler, who was standing quietly in the corner of the room. Tyler, you better call your grandmother. She's probably worried. The boy nodded and walked out into the hallway to make a call. Michael watched him go, suddenly realizing that this kid from Chicago's toughest neighborhood had shown more courage and integrity than many adults he knew. He's an extraordinary boy, Michael said, and very observant. Tyler has a special gift, Ms. Pearson agreed. He sees things that most people miss. He notices patterns, connections between things. If he had access to a quality education, he would have been a brilliant diagnostician or researcher. Michael considered her words, looking at Olivia. His daughter had it all. The best schools, private tutoring, opportunities that kids like Tyler could only dream of. And yet, was she happier? Did she realize her potential better? It was well past midnight when Jonathan called Michael with an update. He had reached out to a trusted contact at the FDA and informally provided data on neurobalance. The first steps had also been taken toward filing a class action lawsuit against MedTech Pharma. But there's a problem, Michael, Jonathan added. MedTech management already knows about your actions. They've called an emergency board meeting, and I've heard that they're preparing an aggressive response strategy, including possible charges of industrial espionage and breach of trade secrets against Ms. Pearson. Absurd, Michael said indignantly. She was simply doing her professional duty. I know, but they have a serious legal team and a lot of money to create problems. Be prepared for a media storm tomorrow. After the call, Michael sat next to Olivia, listening to the steady beeping of the monitors and watching the IV slowly drain of the medicine he prayed would save his daughter. He thought back to all the times in his life when he chose business over family. All the times he missed plays, sporting events, and parent-teacher conferences because of urgent business meetings. Tyler appeared from the hallway with 2 paper cups of coffee. Miss Pearson said you might need this, and he said, handing 1 cup to Michael. Thank you, Michael said, taking a sip of the bitter hospital coffee that tasted better than any high-end coffee shop espresso. Isn't your grandma worried that you're not home yet? She's used to me staying at the hospital sometimes, Tyler shrugged, especially when there's a lot of work there. Volunteering here helps me get extra credits for school. You are very responsible for your age. I had to grow up fast, Tyler said simply, and Michael heard in his voice a note of experience that a 14-year-old boy shouldn't have. Tyler walked over to Olivia's bed and looked closely at the monitors. Her numbers are stabilizing, he noted. That's a good sign. How do you know? I spent a lot of time in hospitals, watching, learning. Miss Pearson would sometimes explain to me what the different numbers and graphs meant. Michael was impressed. This kid from the ghetto, without privileges or opportunities, had found a way to learn and develop himself. And not just learn, use his knowledge to help others. The rest of the night was spent in tense anticipation. Michael would doze off in his chair for a while, only to be woken up by the slightest change in the rhythm of the monitors or footsteps in the hallway. Tyler stayed behind too, perched in a chair in the corner of the room, occasionally coming out to talk to the nurses or get more coffee. Early in the morning, Olivia's condition began to improve noticeably. Dr. Washington, who, it turned out, had also stayed home for the night, examined her and confirmed the early signs of progress. Her body is starting to respond to the treatment, he said with cautious optimism. Her temperature is coming down, and the inflammation markers in her blood are decreasing. But there's still a long way to go. Michael nodded, feeling the first spark of hope flare in his chest. At 7 in the morning, Caroline Blackwood literally flew into the room, a slender, elegant woman with the same chestnut hair as Olivia. Despite the early hour and the obvious sleepless night spent on the flight, she looked collected and determined. Michael, she nodded briefly at her ex-husband, immediately moving to her daughter's bed. How is she? She's getting better, Michael replied. Dr. Washington says the treatment protocol is working. Caroline stroked Olivia's forehead, then turned to notice Tyler, who was trying to blend into the wall, feeling out of place in this family scene. And you? She looked at the boy with slight confusion. This is Tyler, Michael introduced him. He's the one we found out what was happening to Olivia. He saved her life. Caroline raised her eyebrows in surprise, but then her face softened. Then Tyler, I owe you one. Thank you so much for helping my girl. Tyler nodded sheepishly, not used to such gratitude. I just did what I had to do, ma'am. At that moment, Jonathan Price entered the room, looking even more impeccable than the day before, despite a sleepless night. Michael, we need to talk. Alone. They walked out into the hallway, where Jonathan showed Michael his tablet. It started, he said, opening several news sites where headlines flashed. Black Innovation's CEO on the brink of collapse. Billionaire's mental health in question. Michael Blackwood kidnaps his own daughter from hospital. Tech mogul's shocking actions put child's life at risk. They work fast, Michael noted grimly. What else? MedTech Pharma has issued an urgent statement calling the allegations against Neurobalance completely baseless and defamatory. They are threatening legal action against anyone who spreads false information, including you and Ms. Pearson. Michael shook his head. Let them threaten. We have evidence and witnesses. On this point, they are attempting to discredit Ms. Pearson by calling her a dismissed nurse with a grudge. And Mercy Memorial has already issued a statement expressing deep concern over your actions and the irresponsible decision to discontinue recommended treatment. Michael felt a wave of anger rise inside him. They are willing to destroy children for profit, and I am irresponsible? I know it's disgusting, but I must warn you, there may be attempts to get a court order to return Olivia to Mercy Memorial under the pretext of protecting her interests. They're not taking my daughter, Michael said firmly. What do we need to do? Counterattack. Now. You have the evidence. You have Ms. Pearson with her data. You have Olivia, who is recovering thanks to the right treatment. We need to use it. They returned to the room where Caroline was talking with Dr. Washington, listening carefully as he explained Olivia's condition and the treatments being used. Caroline, Michael said to her, the situation is getting complicated. MedTech Pharma and Mercy Memorial have already launched a media smear campaign against us and may try to get Olivia back into their hospital through the courts. Caroline turned pale. They wouldn't dare. They will. The stakes are very high. Neurobalance is a blockbuster drug that makes billions. Admitting that it is dangerous for children will cost them everything. Caroline thought for a moment. Then her face took on that determined expression that Michael remembered so well from their life together. What do we need to do? Tell the truth. Publicly. Immediately. You still have connections in the media from your work in PR? Of course, I can organize a press conference in a few hours. Excellent. In the meantime, I will call an emergency meeting of the Black Innovation Board of Directors. As the main shareholder, I have the right to remove the management of MedTech Pharma and initiate an internal investigation. What about Olivia? Caroline looked at her sleeping daughter. She needs someone with her. I'll stay, Tyler offered unexpectedly. If that's okay. I know all the nurses here, and they know me. If anything changes in her condition, I'll let you know right away. Michael and Caroline exchanged glances, surprised by the boy's maturity and responsibility. Are you sure? Michael asked. It could be dangerous. If they actually try to take Olivia back by force. I won't let them take her, Tyler said, steely determination in his voice. I know every ins and outs of this hospital, and Dr. Washington has security, real security, not the showy stuff like at Mercy Memorial. Dr. Washington nodded in confirmation. Patient safety is our top priority, especially given the area we are in. We will not allow any interference with Olivia's care. The decision had been made. Michael and Jonathan went to the Black Innovation headquarters, and Carolyn went to the hotel where she was staying to arrange a press conference. Dr. Washington continued to supervise Olivia's treatment, consulting periodically with Ms. Pearson, who, despite a sleepless night, remained focused and professional. Tyler sat by Olivia's bed, watching the monitors and occasionally telling the sleeping girl stories about the hospital and the people he had met there. He wasn't sure if she could hear him, but Ms. Pearson always said that patients in this state often perceived much more than they appeared to. In the middle of the day, Olivia finally opened her eyes. At first, she seemed disoriented, not understanding where she was or why there was a strange boy next to her. Hi, Tyler said carefully. My name is Tyler. You're safe at St. Luke's. Your parents will be back soon. Olivia tried to speak, but her throat was dry from the intubation. Tyler helped her take a few sips of water through a straw. Thank you, she whispered. Where is my dad? He's taking care of some important matters so that you and the other children don't suffer any more from the bad medicine. He asked me to tell you that he loves you very much and will be back soon. Olivia smiled weakly. You work here? Sort of, Tyler shrugged awkwardly. I help out when I can. Olivia looked at him carefully despite her weakness. You don't look like an official employee. Tyler smiled. Even in this state, she was observant. I'm a volunteer, and I helped your father understand what was happening to you. The medicine you were taking, Neurobalance, caused you to have a severe allergic reaction. But now they're giving you the right medicine, and you'll get better. You're a doctor? Olivia looked surprised. No, Tyler laughed. I just spend a lot of time in hospitals, and I notice things. At that moment, Miss Pearson entered the room and, seeing that Olivia had woken up, quickly approached the bed. Hello, dear, she said softly, checking the monitors. How are you feeling? Tired, Olivia replied. And there's a weakness in my whole body. It's normal after what you've been through. But you're already getting better, and that's the main thing. Miss Pearson quickly examined Olivia, checking her pupils, pulse, and other vital signs, then made a few notes on the chart. I'll go tell Dr. Washington you're awake, and Tyler will stay with you. He's very reliable. When Miss Pearson left, Olivia looked at Tyler again. You saved my life? Tyler was embarrassed. I just helped your father find the right people. The real heroes are Ms. Pearson and Dr. Washington. And your father, who wasn't afraid to go against the system to save you? Olivia thought about it. Dad was always busy, work, meetings, calls. Even when we spent time together, his thoughts were often somewhere else. People change, Tyler said philosophically, especially when they realize what can happen to the people they love. Tyler, a nurse ran into the room. There are people from Mercy Memorial at the hospital entrance with some papers. Dr. Washington is trying to detain them, but they claim they have a court order. Tyler instantly jumped up, his face becoming serious. They're not going to give in, he muttered. We must warn Mr. Blackwood. He quickly pulled out an old cell phone and dialed the number Michael had given him before leaving. Mr. Blackwood, they're here, the people from Mercy Memorial, claiming they have a court order to take Olivia away. Holy junk, they're moving faster than we expected. Michael's voice was tense. Listen to me carefully, Tyler. This is probably a bluff. Jonathan just checked. No official orders were issued. Ask Dr. Washington to ask them for an official court order, stamped and signed by a judge. If they can't produce one, it's a fake. What if they can? Then have them contact Jonathan on the number I'm sending you now. He'll know what to do. We're almost done here and we'll be there soon. Just don't let them see Olivia. Tyler ended the call and turned to the nurse. Tell Dr. Washington this is probably a bluff. Tell him to demand an official court order with the judge's seal and signature. And here's the number of Mr. Blackwood's lawyer. The nurse nodded and quickly left. Tyler turned to Olivia, who had been listening to the entire conversation with her eyes wide with fear. They want to take me? Back to that hospital? Don't worry, Tyler said confidently. We won't let them do that. Your father and Dr. Washington will take care of it. But deep down, he wasn't so sure. He knew how powerful institutions like Mercy Memorial could be, especially with the backing of pharmaceutical giants. What if they do get through? Olivia asked, as if reading his thoughts. Tyler thought for a moment, then moved closer to the bed. Then we have a plan B. Can you stand up? Olivia tried to sit up, but the weakness was too strong. Don't think... It's okay, I'll help. Tyler began disconnecting the non-invasive monitors, leaving only the most necessary ones. If we have to, we'll leave through the service exit. I know every hallway and passage in this hospital. Miss Pearson returned to the room, her face tense. Tyler, what are you doing? Preparing for emergency evacuation if necessary, the boy answered seriously. Have they really come for her? Yes, and they have some papers, but Dr. Washington won't let them through. He called security and demanded an official order. They're contacting the court now. In the meantime, Mr. Blackwood is already on his way. We need to buy time. Miss Pearson nodded, quickly assessing the situation. Olivia is unable to move independently even with assistance. It is best not to move her unless absolutely necessary. Then we'll have to protect her here, Tyler said firmly. Miss Pearson, can you shut down the main elevators? Lock down access to this floor? Tyler, we can't just... They want to take her to a place where she will get worse again, to where other children died. Miss Pearson hesitated, then nodded decisively. You're right. I'll talk to security and explain the situation. There are emergency escape routes in case of fire. They can be used to restrict access. She quickly left and Tyler went back to preparing. He checked that the mobile IV was ready to move and gathered all the necessary medications that Miss Pearson had ordered. Do you really know what you're doing? Olivia asked doubtfully. I've spent a lot of time in hospitals, Tyler said, still working. Sometimes how fast you can move a patient can make the difference between their life and death, especially in our area where there are sometimes shootings right outside the hospital. Olivia looked at him with growing respect. How old are you? 14, and you? 13, but I don't even know how to cook my own food. Tyler smiled slightly. Different lives, different experiences. I've been cooking for myself since I was 8, when my mother couldn't do it. Loud voices and the sound of quick footsteps could be heard in the hallway. Tyler tensed, ready to act, but it was Dr. Washington, flanked by 2 guards. The situation is complicated, he said as he entered the chamber. They do have a writ of habeas corpus, signed by Judge Morris. It's a preliminary ruling, but it's legally binding until the case is fully heard. What does that mean? Tyler asked. That means they technically have the right to transfer Olivia back to Mercy Memorial. But, the doctor raised his hand, seeing Tyler and Olivia ready to protest. As the attending physician, I have the right to refuse a transfer if I believe it poses an immediate threat to the patient's life. I have prepared a medical report that clearly states that moving Olivia at this time is dangerous to her health. Will they accept this? Tyler asked doubtfully. They will have to. It's standard medical practice. but they will push and look for workarounds. So I've increased security at the entrances and restricted access to the floor to everyone except medical staff and Olivia's family. At that moment, Michael Blackwood literally flew into the room, followed by Caroline and Jonathan Price. "Olivia!" Michael rushed to his daughter's bed. "You're awake. How are you feeling?" "Daddy." The girl's eyes filled with tears, and she stretched out her hands to her father. Michael hugged his daughter, trying not to touch the tubes and sensors. "It's going to be okay, honey. I won't let them take you." Caroline came over to the bed as well, stroking her daughter's hair and holding back her own tears. "My brave girl." Jonathan, meanwhile, was discussing something with Dr. Washington, looking over the court order. "It's Morris," he said grimly. "He's known for his connections to the pharmaceutical industry. But Dr. Washington is right. His medical opinion buys us time." "How much?" Michael asked, not letting go of his daughter's hand. "A few hours, maybe a day. They've already filed an appeal, asking for independent experts to assess Olivia's condition. Then we need to move faster. Caroline, how about the press conference?" "Everything is ready. It will start in an hour. Live broadcast on 3 major channels and online broadcasts." "Great. How are things with the board of directors?" "Better than I expected," Jonathan replied. 8 of the 12 board members supported your demand for the immediate removal of MedTech Pharma's leadership and an internal investigation. The rest abstained, and no one voted against. "That's because no one wants to be on the side of someone who's poisoning children," Michael said bitterly. "Even the most cynical bastards know it's a PR disaster." "Michael, language," Caroline automatically admonished him, nodding towards Olivia. "Sorry," Michael smiled weakly. "In any case, the first step has been taken. MedTech's management has been removed. An internal investigation has been launched. Now we need to go public with the full information." Jonathan nodded. "I have prepared a press release and documents for the FDA. I have also contacted Senator Gardner, who is the chairman of the House Health Committee and a longtime critic of the pharmaceutical industry. He is interested in our case and is prepared to initiate a Senate hearing." "Great. Now we need to—" He was interrupted by a knock on the door. A nurse entered with a tense expression on her face. "Dr. Washington, there are representatives from Mercy Memorial with a group of police officers. They say that if we do not allow them to see the patient, they will be forced to use force." Jonathan stepped forward quickly. "It's a bluff. The police have no right to interfere with medical decisions." "Perhaps," Dr. Washington replied, "but we are a small private clinic. We cannot stand up to the police if they decide to act." Michael thought for a moment, then made a decision. "Let them come in. Just Mercy Memorial. No police. And just to make sure Olivia is alive and getting the treatment she needs." "Michael, are you sure?" Caroline asked worriedly. "Yes. We can't look like we're hiding anything. Let them see that Olivia is happy here, that her condition is improving thanks to Ms. Pearson's protocol." Dr. Washington nodded and went out to relay the terms. A few minutes later he returned, accompanied by Dr. Harrison and another doctor from Mercy Memorial, whom Michael did not know. Dr. Harrison glanced around the room briefly, lingering on the equipment and IVs, then looked at Olivia. "Hello, Olivia. How are you feeling?" He tried to sound friendly, but his voice sounded cold and professional. "Better," the girl answered firmly, squeezing her father's hand tighter. "And I don't want to go back to your hospital. I understand you're scared, but Mercy Memorial has the best equipment and the best people who nearly killed my daughter by prescribing aggressive immunosuppressive therapy for an autoimmune reaction caused by neurobalance." Michael interrupted sharply. "And this after hiding information from the FDA about the drug's deadly side effects." "Mr. Blackwood, these accusations are completely baseless and we have evidence." Michael nodded toward Ms. Pearson, who came closer, holding a folder of papers. 63 cases of severe autoimmune reactions following neurobalance administration, documented in your hospital alone in the last 6 months. 17 deaths. And those are just the ones Ms. Pearson managed to identify before you fired her for trying to bring this to light. Dr. Harrison turned pale and his colleagues shifted nervously from foot to foot. This is taken out of context. These patients had a lot of other health problems and they were all taking neurobalance, Ms. Pearson said firmly. They all developed similar clinical pictures. They were all misdiagnosed and given treatments that only made their condition worse. Ms. Pearson, you were dismissed for professional incompetence and your research has no scientific value, Dr. Harrison replied coldly. Really? Michael raised an eyebrow. Then how do you explain the fact that Olivia's condition is improving precisely because of the treatment protocol devised by Ms. Pearson? A protocol that you refuse to even consider? Dr. Harrison was at a loss for an answer, and his colleague looked increasingly uncomfortable. In any case, Dr. Harrison finally said, "We have a court order to transfer the patient to Mercy Memorial for continued treatment. And we have a medical opinion from Dr. Washington that such a transfer poses an immediate threat to Olivia's life," Jonathan countered. "And if you insist, we are prepared to present that opinion to the judge, along with evidence of concealment of information about the side effects of neurobalance. Is that your last word?" Dr. Harrison looked angry. "No," Michael replied calmly. "My final word will be in 45 minutes at a press conference, where I will present all the information you have been trying to hide. After that, I don't think you'll have to worry about my daughter's transfer, but about a federal investigation and class action lawsuits from the families of dead children." Dr. Harrison's eyes flashed with fear. He knew that the career he had built over decades could be destroyed in an instant. "Mr. Blackwood," his voice became almost pleading, "let's not rush this. Perhaps we could come to some mutually beneficial solution. You're offering me a deal?" Michael couldn't believe his ears. After everything that happened? After 17 dead children? "I think it's time for Dr. Harrison to go," Caroline interjected, her voice icy. "He's already seen that Olivia is receiving adequate treatment. The purpose of the visit has been accomplished." The second doctor from Mercy Memorial tugged at his colleague's sleeve. "Come on, Richard. We have nothing more to do here." With obvious reluctance, Dr. Harrison allowed himself to be led away. At the door, he turned and took one last look at Olivia, as if trying to memorize her features, perhaps sensing that this patient would be the beginning of his end. When they left, the tension in the room eased a little. Michael took a deep breath, only now realizing how tense he had been. "They won't give up that easily," Jonathan warned. "But this visit works in our favor. Dr. Harrison is clearly scared and may make a mistake. We need to move quickly." Michael glanced at his watch. "Caroline, the press conference is in 30 minutes. Are you ready?" "More than," her eyes burned with determination. "They will pay for what they did to our daughter and the other children." Michael turned to Olivia, who, despite her weakness, was watching everything that was happening closely. "Sweetheart, I have to go away for a while. But I promise, when I come back, everything will be different. No one will be able to threaten you anymore." "I know, Dad." Olivia smiled weakly. "Go and show them who you are. The real you." Michael kissed his daughter on the forehead and turned to Tyler, who had been standing silently nearby the entire time, watching the unfolding drama. "Tyler, I'm trusting you with the most precious thing I have once again." "I won't fail you, sir," the boy replied seriously. Michael, Caroline, and Jonathan left for the press conference, leaving Olivia in the care of Tyler, Miss Pearson, and Dr. Washington. Tyler sat down next to the bed, shifting uncomfortably. "Your father, he loves you very much," he finally said. "I know." Olivia looked out the window. "But for a long time it seemed like his work was more important. He was always busy, always rushing somewhere. Even when he was home, his mind was somewhere else. Mom says that's why they got divorced. People sometimes don't realize what's really important to them until they're in danger of losing it," Tyler said philosophically. Olivia looked at him curiously. "How much did you have to lose to become so wise?" Tyler smiled sadly but didn't answer. Meanwhile, the press conference began in a conference room at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in downtown Chicago. The room was packed with reporters from every major newspaper and television station. Cameras were trained on Michael and Caroline, who were seated at a table with Jonathan, Ms. Pearson, who had left the hospital only briefly to speak at the conference, and Dr. Washington. Michael began his speech, which was broadcast live across the country. "Good afternoon. My name is Michael Blackwood, and I speak today not as the CEO of Black Innovation, but as a father whose daughter nearly died due to criminal negligence and corporate greed." He paused, collecting his thoughts. 3 days ago, my 13-year-old daughter, Olivia, collapsed during a school field trip. She developed symptoms that baffled the top doctors at Mercy Memorial, one of Chicago's most prestigious hospitals. Intermittent fever, a strange rash, abnormal blood counts. Doctors suspected a rare autoimmune disease and recommended aggressive immunosuppressive therapy. Michael took out the folder that Miss Pearson had handed him. "What I didn't know then was that these symptoms were caused by the drug Neurobalance that Olivia was taking for anxiety, a drug manufactured by MedTech Pharma, a subsidiary of my corporation, a drug that was approved by the FDA based on falsified clinical trial data." A whisper ran through the room. The cameras clicked with redoubled force. "Thanks to Ms. Eleanor Pearson, the former head nurse at Mercy Memorial, and this young man named Tyler Jackson, an ordinary teenager from the South Side who we don't see today because he's babysitting my daughter. I learned the truth. In the last 6 months, Mercy Memorial Hospital alone has seen 63 cases of severe autoimmune reactions following the use of neurobalance. 17 of them have been fatal. The journalists began to write frantically. Some raised their hands with questions, but Michael continued. When Ms. Pearson tried to bring this pattern to the attention of hospital management, she was fired. When I tried to transfer my daughter to another hospital for a second opinion, Mercy Memorial and MedTech Pharma teamed up to block me, even obtaining a dubious court order. Michael picked up the documents he was holding in his hands. Here is complete evidence that MedTech Pharma's management knew about the deadly side effects of neurobalance during the clinical trials, but deliberately hid this information from the FDA. Here is evidence that Dr. Richard Harrison and Mercy Memorial's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. James Foster, received generous research grants from MedTech Pharma in exchange for ignoring reports of side effects. Caroline took the microphone, her voice shaking with suppressed emotion. Our daughter is alive only because Ms. Pearson developed a treatment protocol for this condition by studying previous cases, a protocol that Mercy Memorial refused to even consider. How many children might have survived if they had been listened to? How many parents would not have lived through this nightmare if profit had not been put above safety? Jonathan Price stepped forward. We have already submitted all evidence to the FDA, the Attorney General's office, and the Senate Health Committee. We demand an immediate recall of neurobalance from the market, a full federal investigation, and fair compensation for all affected families. The room exploded with questions. Journalists jumped up from their seats, trying to shout each other down. Michael raised his hand, calling for silence. Today I have decided to remove the entire management of MedTech Pharma and initiate an internal investigation. But this is not enough. As the CEO of Black Innovation and the main shareholder, I take full responsibility for the failure to ensure proper control over the subsidiary. I will create an independent fund to compensate all affected families and will personally ensure that everyone involved in this crime is punished, even if it costs me control of the company I have spent my life building. His voice cracked on the last words. The cameras captured the moment that would be plastered across news sites and social media within hours. A powerful billionaire, broken by the price he had almost paid for his neglect. At St. Luke's, Tyler and Olivia watched the news conference on a tablet. Olivia watched her father in amazement. She had never seen him so sincere, so emotional. He's really changed, she said quietly. I never thought I'd see Dad like this. Sometimes it takes a real disaster to realize what's really important, Tyler noted. At that moment, the door of the ward swung open. Dr. Harrison stood on the threshold with 2 policemen and a man in a suit holding some papers. Olivia Blackwood? The man in the suit asked formally. I'm Mark Jenkins, a social services representative. I have a temporary custody order for you on suspicion of parental neglect and endangering your life and health. Tyler instantly stood between Olivia's bed and the newcomers. What nonsense! Her parents saved her life. Who the heck are you? Stand back, boy, said Dr. Harrison coldly. This is an official court order. The police are here to enforce it. One of the policemen shifted unsteadily from foot to foot. Sir, I'm not sure that... You have your orders, officer, Dr. Harrison interrupted. Mr. Jenkins represents social services, and I am the physician certifying the need for medical intervention. Tyler felt his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced quickly at Olivia, who was watching the scene with wide, horrified eyes, then back at the men who had entered. Ms. Pearson was still at the press conference, and Dr. Washington was probably there too. The only people on the ward were nurses and the doctor on duty, and they were unlikely to be able to resist the police. In desperation, Tyler grabbed his cell phone and hit the live broadcast button on the social media platform, a feature he had never used before. My name is Tyler Jackson, and I'm broadcasting from St. Luke's, he said loudly, pointing the camera at the newcomers. Dr. Harrison from Mercy Memorial, whose criminal activities were just exposed at a national press conference, is attempting to kidnap Olivia Blackwood with the help of a fake social services representative and misguided police officers. Dr. Harrison turned pale as he saw himself being filmed. Turn it off right now. He rushed towards Tyler, trying to snatch the phone. Tyler ducked, continuing to speak into the camera. Dr. Harrison and MedTech Pharma have covered up the deadly side effects of neurobalance. 17 children have already died, Now they're trying to silence the only survivor who could testify against them. "This is slander," shouted Dr. Harrison, trying to grab the phone again. One of the policemen, clearly confused, turned to his colleague. "Joe, did you see the news? They actually said something about some drug and children dying." "This boy is making it all up." Dr. Harrison was on the verge of hysteria. "Mr. Jenkins, do your job." The man calling himself a social services representative stepped toward Olivia's bed, but Tyler stood in front of him, continuing to film. "Show me your ID, right now in the cell," he demanded. The man hesitated, and at that moment 3 men in suits burst into the room. One of them showed an FBI badge. "Special Agent Michael Rodriguez, FBI. Everyone remain where you are." Dr. Harrison froze in place, his face turning gray with fear. "Mr. Jenkins, or whatever your real name is." The agent turned to the man claiming to represent social services. "You are under arrest for attempted kidnapping of a minor, forgery, and impersonating a government employee." 2 other agents quickly handcuffed Mr. Jenkins and Dr. Harrison. The officers, realizing they had been misled, did not resist when Agent Rodriguez asked them to provide their statements. Tyler, still holding the phone on, looked at what was happening in shock. How did you know?" he finally squeezed out. Agent Rodriguez smiled slightly. "After receiving documents from Mr. Blackwood's attorney with evidence of falsification of the clinical trials of neurobalance, we began a preliminary investigation. We received information about possible attempts to obstruct witnesses, so surveillance was established several hours ago. And when your broadcast began," he nodded at the phone in Tyler's hand, "we received precise confirmation of a crime in the process of its commission. Excellent resourcefulness, son." Tyler, finally realizing that the danger was over, walked over to Olivia, who was sitting on the bed, still pale from the shock she had experienced. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Olivia nodded, then suddenly hugged him. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved me again." 10 minutes later, Michael and Caroline literally flew into the room, accompanied by Ms. Pearson and Dr. Washington. Seeing the FBI agents and the prisoners, they froze for a moment in the doorway. "What happened?" Michael rushed to his daughter. "We got a call that there was some kind of incident here." Agent Rodriguez gave a quick rundown of the situation, while Tyler and Olivia filled in the details. Michael's expression grew darker with each word. "They tried to kidnap my daughter using fake social services credentials?" His voice shook with barely contained rage. "To silence her? Or to take her hostage?" "We'll find out, Mr. Blackwood," Agent Rodriguez assured him. "But right now, the important thing is that your daughter is safe, thanks to the resourcefulness of this young man." Michael glanced at Tyler, who was standing to the side, shifting awkwardly from foot to foot. "Tyler..." Michael shook his head at a loss for words. "This is the second time you've saved my daughter's life. I don't know how I can thank you." "No thanks needed, sir," Tyler replied quietly. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Caroline said, stepping closer. "Not just anyone. You're special, Tyler, and we'll never forget what you've done for our family." The arrested men were taken away. FBI agents took preliminary statements from everyone present and left guards at Olivia's room in case the conspirators had other accomplices. By evening, the news of the attempted illegal intervention in Olivia Blackwood's treatment and the revelation by Tyler Jackson had filled the media. The recording of the live broadcast hosted by Tyler gained millions of views in a few hours. Human rights activists, medical experts, and ordinary people across the country were outraged by the actions of MedTech Pharma and Mercy Memorial. The FDA issued an emergency warning about the potential for severe side effects of neurobalance and launched an emergency review of the drug, temporarily restricting its use. Stock analysts predicted a serious drop in Black Innovation shares. But for Michael, the financial consequences were the least of his worries right now. Late that evening, with Olivia asleep and FBI agents quietly waiting in the hallway, Michael, Caroline, Ms. Pearson, and Tyler gathered in a small lounge off the ward. "What now?" Tyler asked, looking at the tired but determined faces of the adults. "We're going to get justice now," Michael said firmly. "For Olivia, for the 17 dead children, for everyone who suffered because of corporate greed and negligence." "It's going to be a long battle," Ms. Pearson warned. "The drug companies have enormous influence and unlimited resources to defend themselves. We have resources too." Michael looked determined. "And more importantly, we have the truth. And now that it's out there, it can't be stopped." He turned to Tyler, looking at the boy carefully. "Tyler, You've proven to be the bravest, most resourceful person I've ever met. Without you, we would have lost her. Tyler looked down, embarrassed. I was just in the right place at the right time. No, Caroline said softly. You were there because you are who you are. You see things that others miss. You care about people you don't know. It's not an accident, it's who you are. Michael took a deep breath. I want to suggest something. It may seem sudden, but today's events have shown me how fragile life is and how important it is not to miss an opportunity to do something right. He exchanged a glance with Caroline, who nodded as if they had already discussed this. Tyler, I know you live with your grandmother, who has a hard time taking care of you. Caroline and I would like to invite you to be a part of our family. As a foster child first, and then if you'd like, we could work out a full adoption. Tyler froze, not believing his ears. You want me to live with you? As Olivia's brother? Exactly, Caroline said softly. You saved her life twice. You're already connected by more than blood. But I'm just a kid from the South Side. I don't know anything about your world, about private schools and big houses. But you know something far more important, Michael replied seriously. You know what it means to have courage when everyone else around you has given up. You know how to remain human in the face of inhumane conditions. That's not something you can learn in a private school, Tyler. That's not something you can learn with all the money in the world. Tyler hung his head, hiding the tears that suddenly welled up. What about Miss Pearson? She was the only one who believed in me, who helped me all these years. Miss Pearson touched his shoulder affectionately. Tyler, my dear, I'm not going anywhere. Mr. Blackwood has already asked me to head up the new Independent Drug Safety Institute. I'll always be there. But this is your chance for a better life, for your potential to be realized. You deserve it more than anyone. The room fell silent. Tyler looked out the window at the Chicago night, a city that had always been merciless to him, but which had given him this incredible chance. Then he turned to Michael and Caroline, his eyes full of determination and hope. I agree, he said simply, but on one condition. What kind? Michael asked. I want to help other kids just like me, kids who are unheard, kids whose lives depend on someone noticing what's happening to them. Michael and Caroline looked at each other, admiration in their eyes. It's not a condition, Tyler, Caroline said softly. It's a promise. At that moment, a faint call was heard from Olivia's room. Dad? Mom? They all hurried to her. Olivia was awake and now half sitting up in bed, looking much better than she had in the morning. She smiled when she saw Tyler. I heard your conversation, she admitted. Does that mean I'm going to have a brother now? Tyler took a hesitant step forward. If you don't mind. Against? I've always dreamed of having a brother. Olivia extended her hand. Especially one who's so cool, who can spot criminals and broadcast live in moments of danger. Tyler took her hand, feeling a warmth spread inside him that he had never felt before. A sense of belonging, a sense of home. Michael and Caroline stood side by side, embracing for the first time in years since their divorce. Miss Pearson watched the scene with tears in her eyes, amazed that so much light could emerge from such a dark story. At that moment, Michael's phone vibrated. It was a text from Jonathan Price. The Senate Health Committee has scheduled an emergency hearing for next week. They want you, Olivia, and Tyler to testify. This is just the beginning, Michael. We're going to make them pay for everything. Michael showed the message to Caroline and Miss Pearson, then looked at the children, his children, who were talking quietly, already building that special bridge of understanding that only happens between brother and sister. You know, he said quietly, I spent my whole life chasing success, thinking it was measured by the numbers in my bank account and the size of my company. How wrong I was. What's important is not that you realized it late, Caroline said softly, but that you realized it not too late. They stood there, a newfound family, bound not by blood, but by something much stronger. A shared struggle, a shared victory, a shared hope for a future where truth and justice matter. Where one brave boy from the ghetto can change the fate of many, simply by following his conscience. And in that moment, Tyler Jackson, who had spent his short life feeling out of place, unwanted, invisible, finally realized that his gift for seeing what others couldn't was not a curse, but a blessing that brought him home.